I'm Phil Lima, and this is Coffee Talk.
Hi everyone, I'm Kim Perlak. I'm the chair of the guitar department at Berklee College of Music, and welcome to another Coffee Talk. As usual, we are joined by our assistant chair, Sheryl Bailey. Hey Sheryl!
Hey everybody, I'm actually hydrating this afternoon. We're doing this in the afternoon, so.
Good for you. I got the last of the student-made coffee in the department. Very strong. It's very strong. It'll get me through. And also joining us as usual is Ben Cody, our senior coordinator. Hey Ben.
Hi, everyone.
And our special guest today is the assistant chair of the voice department at Berklee College of Music, Phil Lima. Hey Phil.
Well, hello. As you mentioned, it's afternoon. Yes, and Cheryl, I am hydrating. You know, we singers, our hydration mantra or, guidance. Gee, I get the question all the time. Gee, Mr. Phil, how do I know if I'm drinking enough water to be well hydrated?
How do you know, Phil?
And the answer is if you pee clear, if you pee pale, you will sing clear. So pee pale, sing
Ah,
clear.
this is
Now,
why we bring
the,
our colleagues from other departments onto the
the
program.
volume of water that we need, that we as singers need, of course, we're individuals. The volume of water any individual needs will vary with all sorts of things, like how much caffeine intake do you have during the day? How physically active are you? Et cetera, et cetera. How big are you?
Mm.
As you all know, I take up a lot of space. There is a lot of volume to me. So I need, day by day, I need a good 6 to 7 liters of water to make sure that I know that my vocal folds are nice and moist and nice and squishy so that when I call upon them to do what they need to do, they will respond favorably.
That's it.
So
So, Phil, because it's coffee talk, we do talk about people's relationships with coffee. So, let me ask you, so do you drink coffee? Do you have a routine, and does that routine vary on your performance days because of what you just described?
I do drink coffee. I had a delicious cappuccino this morning. I'll probably have an espresso this afternoon. And in fact, on that table just over there are little K cups of espresso ready to go for the faculty lounge. I supply the espresso for the faculty lounge in this building, or I'm one of the folks who supplies. Yes, I have habituated to about maybe 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is over a long period of time. So my body has habituated. And so that's part of my standard caffeine intake every day. And so with my regular, pea pale sing clear volume of water, that amount of caffeine intake is just fine for me. So a lot, caffeine, of course, is a diuretic. And so we always want to be careful about leaching water out of our system. So we singers, as long as we're habituated to the amount of caffeine we drink, we're fine.
Mm.
But always water, 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 water.
Wow. Okay, so I have another question for you about this because at our coffee bar here in the department, because we're the main faculty hub for all areas in our building, we started carrying honey and we made sure that we have like a constant, like a hot water machine as well as a cold water machine. So are there times of the year where it's like hot water, or is that just when you feel like you're getting a cold or you have those kinds of reactions? Like what's the hot water, cold water situation?
So if what we're talking about is, again, fundamental interior, endemic hydration, that means we have enough water so that all bodily systems are in good shape.
Hmm.
First of all, honey means nothing.
Okay.
Olive oil means nothing.
Okay.
I know you didn't mention that,
No,
but
it's good to
students,
know.
hey,
They think
Mr.
it
Phil,
does. So we just went with it. We were like, listen, we're your friends. We will get you what you need. What do you need? And they said honey. So we went with it, but that's good to know that it doesn't mean anything. Good.
Doesn't mean anything
For
from
this.
from the
Right.
point of view of internal hydration.
Okay. Okay.
The only thing that matters when it comes to that is water intake.
Okay.
And, that could be, watermelon. It could be, other really juicy fruits. It could be water-based soups, et cetera, et cetera. Honey, drinking olive oil, nice warm water, all that wonderful soothing effect that we get that really does affect our throats and gives us that nice, comfortable feeling is great.
Okay.
It's really wonderful. However, it has no effect on the vocal folds themselves, allergies aside, right? Because there could be inflammation because of allergies. But if there are no allergies, if that wonderful soothing effect that really makes you feel comfortable, you get from ice cream, that's fine. You get that nice smoothing effect. Because remember, Mother Nature has designed our bodily systems so expertly that when we swallow, whatever it is we're swallowing, water, coffee, ice cream, mucus, whatever we're swallowing, remember, it goes down the back channel. It goes down the esophagus, right? It's the digestive system. We've got mechanisms, including the vocal folds or vocal cords, that close off the top of the windpipe so that we don't get stuff down into our lungs and cause a problem like, drink a whole bunch of water and water gets in your lungs and you drown.
That's not good. Yeah.
So it's not good. So it sometimes is mind-blowing for folks to realize that wonderful soothing throat coat tea that I love, or the honey, that those things are meaningless for your vocal folds, for the things that actually make sound.
I did hear as a secondary point to the really important point of drink water, be hydrated, you will be healthier, which is true for guitar and for voice, but really for, so many of our students who are songwriters and they sing and play guitar. There's a lot of people in our community there, right?
Yes.
I also heard as a secondary point that from a soothing perspective, we should have an ice cream budget here in the guitar.
I think we all should have an ice cream budget.
That's what I got out of that,
I hope my doctor's not going to view this. He read the Riot Act to me the other day.
I think like the way that you're talking about water nourishing your vocal cord, it's so immediate with singers, like your vocal folds, your mechanism. It is also true that if you stay hydrated as a guitarist, it really hydrates all of your tendons, all of your muscles, all of the way we make music, with our bodies. If you're not hydrated, you're really having a hard time, and you're really injury prone. And sometimes vocalists, you all know it in such an acute way because it's immediate for you.
And speaking of immediacy, what's I think also really important for us all to remember when it comes to hydration, that actually hydration takes time.
Yes.
So the students or colleagues who walk into the recording session or to the gig with the gallon of water and chug half of it 10 minutes before before a couple of hours of singing, yeah, I'm super hydrated. All you're going to do is pee that away.
So how long does it take to really become hydrated in your body?
Could take it think about this. If you're drinking water to systemically hydrate, and your body had to choose between using water to maintain heart and brain function, versus phonation, and the other functions of the vocal folds, which do you think your body would prioritize? Yeah, the brain and heart function, right?
Yeah.
because the vocal folds themselves, as wonderful as vocalization, singing and speaking is, and the mind-blowing effect it has on all of us and has for millennia, it's a secondary function.
Right.
The vocal folds sitting there, those two little pieces of muscle covered by gooky saliva, mucousy stuff. Their fundamental function is not about speech, and certainly not about singing. They're about closing the gap so that food and water doesn't get down my trachea.
Right.
That's their fundamental function. And then also, another function they do that's really important for life is they help us to build air pressure beneath them to do heavy work, like delivering a baby, or like lifting heavy weights, or like, gee, I'm kind of constipated and I need to push to get that poop out. That's the real function, the life-saving function of the vocal folds. So being well hydrated for a nice, beautiful sound, that's way down on the body's priority list. Long way, so to make a long story interminable, it could, depending on the individual, really having the vocal folds, and specifically it's the covering of the vocal folds, the squishy, mucousy covering of the vocal folds, being hydrated enough to function well. Boy, water that I drink, it could take an hour, 2, 3, depending on what's happening with my body.
Okay.
For that water to make its way to that part of my body for hydration.
Wow.
So that's why we drink a lot of water, but the key to it for hydration, particularly for the vocal folds, is we have to be sipping water all day long.
I see.
All day. All day for that systematic hydration. So anybody out there who sings, you're going to follow Uncle Phil's advice, and you're going to drink enough so that you pee pale to sing clear. Remember that means you're also going to be peeing a lot. You're going to be going to the bathroom all the time. It's just part of the singer's life.
Well, I like this for all of us because I can't tell you how often this comes up in our conversations, because it really is this part of taking good care of yourself. And as a guitarist, because we hold our instrument in our hands, we can forget that the water we intake is essential to our ability to play technically. And the other thing that you think about acutely that sometimes we forget is the importance of breathing. And I'm always, every day, in every class, if you've ever taken a class with me out there, I make everyone come. I invite everyone to come in and tune and put their guitar down and close their eyes and breathe. And then just really pay attention to what happens. So you learn what it's like when you're tense to breathe. And then you can hear how that impacts your sound and feel how it impacts your hands. This is something that obviously it's a core principle of singing. And I'm wondering, how do you help students become aware of the tension they carry just on a daily basis in between classes or just in daily life that they bring into a practice room or into a concert hall?
And a really great question. I think maybe just to take a couple of steps back, I think when it comes to breath and breathing and its well-coordinated use as a power source for propagating vibration that then becomes what we call speech or sound, I think the first thing for us to remember is that thank goodness that we don't have to remember to breathe in order to survive. Thank goodness, right? Because when we're asleep, we die, right? Because we're unconscious.
That's a good point, Uncle Phil. Yeah.
So, thank the miracle of the human machine or the mammalian machine that we actually have the autonomic, the sort of autopilot nervous system that runs all these systems for us, like breathing and blinking our eyes, or the fact that when you sneeze, you can't sneeze with your eyes open because your eyeballs would fly out because of all that pressure, all that good stuff. So with that in mind, I try to ask students, and I try to ask myself periodically, to just reflect on what it's like to breathe when I'm not thinking about it. What is it like to breathe when I'm asleep? What is it like to breathe when I'm sitting in a Zoom session and I'm not talking and I'm listening to some guy go on and on and on about something? Okay, I know how to do this. And if I can be aware of just a few things, I can use my breathing as an element of my wellness. Like, I can notice how generally my breathing is much more effective for helping me to be centered, calmed, and centered when the top part of my body, when my torso, my thoracic area, around my belly and my ribs and my shoulders, when it's generally pretty quiet, when it's released, when it's not, God, you can hear the effect on my voice of this. If I can optimize my breathing function for whatever purpose. If I optimize my physical position and remember that I am built in such a way that a comfortable, sort of upright, sort of as if my rib cage seems to be floating, and as if my shoulders seem to be melting down my torso, that's an optimized position for all the stuff that happens when I breathe to happen. The muscle movements, et cetera, et cetera. So I try to get folks to remember that, gee, I do know how to breathe for lots of purposes, including centering and calming, because I do it every night. I do it every night. I hope that is helpful and makes sense.
I think so. I love that. I think that's great. And I think we can get deeper into how all of this affects practicing and tone production and all of the way you work on music as we go, because Sheryl loves to ask questions like that. In fact, do you want to ask a question like that now, Sheryl? I can already tell you're thinking about it, so I'm going to hand it over to you if you would like to.
Well, sure. I mean, just the thing about breathing and getting that centeredness, for anything, for our daily life, for our conversation, we need this more and more, instead of just reacting, to actually pause and breathe and consider your reaction. But I have this discussion with guitar players all the time that great technique, well, first of all, just great technique is the ability to express your ideas, with effortlessly. So that's what we're all trying to get to. But without relaxation, you can't get there. So I would say relaxation is tension is your enemy, and relaxation is your partner in doing that. So with posture and breathing, you get there because you can't, if your posture isn't there and you're not breathing, you're not relaxed. And so we have to start there. And I know I've had some students just go, well, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, you can't, there's nobody that you could see. I mean, I think this is a great thing about YouTube is that we can see all the great players of any instrument, because this is a universal thing to all instruments. So I say, watch Vladimir Horowitz, or watch Bela Fleck, or watch Chick Corea, or watch Jimi Hendrix. They all are virtuosos, and they're all very relaxed. And it's amazing to see that body language. So think about that on your instrument or whatever your discipline is too. Obviously, a classical player is going to be more refined in their movement than maybe a rock player or a funk player. But it doesn't matter the instrument, but these principles apply to developing that great technique. So starting with posture and breath.
So true. The thing I do try to remind folks of, though, is we always try to remove tension, right? But I think we have to remember that. Let's take. Maybe I won't use posture, because so often posture, for some folks, connotes a rigidity and this thing. I like to discuss the idea of body carriage with students, and one of the things to remember, of course, is that optimized body carriage for whatever the work is that we're doing involves muscular tension. That is, muscles are engaged and they're doing the work to hold us in the right way for that optimization. What I think we're trying to eliminate all the time are what we might think of as helping tensions. What are the superfluous tensions that are robbing us of efficiency, that are robbing us of that hundredth of a dB of resonance that just makes whatever we're doing shine? So trying to identify and melt away helping tensions, I think, is really important. That thing. So there are, and so many ways to do that, to build that awareness. As singers, we use the mirrors all the time. Not only because we're singers after all, but because that mirror is that helpful external reflection, literally reflection of what we're doing. And boy, it can reveal helping tensions. Mr. Lima, why every time you sing middle C does your left shoulder rise? I don't know, because I've developed a crazy helping tension. Okay, oh yeah, I just saw that. Okay, time for that to melt away. So I think it's really important to remember that tension, the right functional, needed functional tension, has to be there. There's no more tense feeling than blowing out all the air in your body and feeling that tug from your abs, from your abdominal muscles, as they tug in and pull in and up to help expel bad air out of your system. That's absolute necessary tension. Then it releases, and the cycle starts again. So I try in my own practice and in helping others to help identify good, healthy, functional tension versus superfluous, what we think of as maybe helping tension.
Phil, can you keep building on that? Because I think we're always advising students. There are some students who are under practiced. There are some students who tend to over practice. And then when, especially if something's coming up, like all of a sudden. And then there are many of us who are in the middle, like we're consistent and we're trying to reframe things. And I bet there's also, because of all the way that you're approaching your singing in a healthy way, the time that you spend, like what you work on, how long you work on it, how often your sessions are spaced. That's something that comes up a lot. Do you have general advice for people as they're thinking about that?
Sure, thanks. Boy, I love to practice. One of those folks who, early on, many times I would practice way too much and practice way wrong. And the next day I'm talking like this. Yeah, of course, we've all done that. I think I'm trying to help others keep in mind that the key to practice is mindfulness, is awareness, and minute to minute, moment to moment mindfulness. So you might walk by my studio at 6 o'clock in the evening when it's time for me to practice. It's on my calendar. And then you'll notice that time on my calendar to practice, that hour, Monday through Friday, I am not singing for 60 minutes. I'm not, because I'm paying attention. I'm using my own self-awareness to think about what I want to do, to observe what I just did, then to analyze it and decide that the next time I do it, the correction needs to be this or that. So I think mindfulness in practicing is critical. We know that, of course, that there is no substitute for healthy, mindful repetition. So the quality of the practice and the quantity of the practice, quality and quantity here go hand in hand, right? But especially for folks who sing, we have to remember that we are much better off with healthy, mindful, repeated, short practice sessions than marathons. Especially, sort of the cramming things. Oh man, I didn't learn that chart, and oh man, that the event is in 3 hours, and so I'm gonna scream for the next 2.5 hours. Forget about it. No way. As singers, one of the big challenges we have is to remember that we are using our instruments when we are not singing. Mm-hmm. And so if we have received a potential allotment over our lives, over our singing lives, of singing units, whatever they are, that's what we got. We've got a bank account with a bunch of singing dollars in them, or vocal dollars in them. So every time I speak, every time I scream at somebody across the street, hey! Every time I go to a concert and whoop it, or go to a football game and whoop it up, I've just spent some of my vocal dollars. And if I don't do things to make periodic deposits, I'm going to drain my balance. So I've got to remember that I can't, like my instrumental colleagues, practice 3, 4, 5, 6 hours a day. I can't. A really mindful, healthy 5 to 6 days of, once I'm habituated, of an hour, 75 minutes of practice a day, with a lot of that not being sound making, is really, really, I think, really quite remarkable and will yield tremendous benefits.
Yeah.
If you hired me to sing a new opera, an opera that's new to me, I'm going to say to you, and it's a major role, I'm going to say thank you. I look forward to our working together next year,
Right.
a year from now. I need time to not only learn it, to truly assimilate it, to metabolize it, and make it really a part of my body so that I'm able to do it, with as much ease as it calls for. So time, quality, and reasonableness in terms of the volume of practice, I think is particularly important for singers.
I think that I really hope that the guitar players listening to you internalize how important it is to be intentional in your practice. Because sometimes when instrumentalists say, oh, I played like 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 hours, they meant they played. They didn't really practice. They were on the instrument. And I think a lot of injury comes from repetitive, unintentional practicing. To the point where when I was in an undergrad, it was beautiful where I went to school, and there was this little wall, and sometimes we would say we were practicing, but the guitar players would just sit outside and play and hang out. And my teacher had young sons at the time, and you'd see the car pull up, and they would hang out the window, and then they would run up to us, and they were like, "My dad says to tell you, that's not practicing. That's only hanging out. Don't get injured." You know what I mean? Like, and then they'd run away. They were all soccer players, and they would just run right back to the car. And it was like, yeah, okay, that is hanging out, but you can really exhaust your technique, and you have to be careful when you're putting in a lot of time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I always encourage students, and I don't know, maybe your listeners have noticed this in my speaking in this podcast.
Mm.
Since most of the time most of the time that we use the vocal mechanism, we are not singing. We speak way more than we sing. I encourage folks to develop the mindfulness of using day-to-day required speech as practice. And so, again, listeners may have noticed, and viewers may have noticed, when during our time together, I am varying the pitch I'm using in my speech quite a lot. It may, to some folks, seem kind of performative. It's like, why does this guy's voice go up and down all the time? Because I'm kind of practicing. And the music that I sing, I don't sing Gregorian chant. I do not sing this all day. That's not what I sing. I sing that. So varying the pitch in my speech is actually part of my daily practice. Also, I try to incorporate various phrase lengths in my speech. Now, we all do that very naturally, right? As part of how we express ourselves. But I'm actually very aware of when I decide to take a little bit of time here and there so that I'm actually practicing the idea of short phrase, long phrase, frequent initiations of sound versus sustaining of sound. So I really encourage those of us who sing to use our speech as part of our practice.
Oh, it's fascinating. here's another thing that I've always been curious about. It seems that vocalists are also very aware of the phases of life and the phases of career. Like as you get older, your voice changes in a certain way. And so the repertoire you may choose or the opportunities that you may have in front of you grow and change. And that must make you acutely aware of something we all experience, which is that your music life is not a straight line and is not monochromatic. And I'm wondering if you have some reflections or experiences to share in that regard.
Yeah, oh, what a cool question. Um, so let's see, I've been singing now, and I think about this every once in a while. I've been practicing almost every day for like 35 years. I started singing late. I was a string player. I was a professional string player in college and right after college. When I lived in New Jersey and worked in New York, non-music, I was also a freelance violist. So I've played pickup gigs in Carnegie Hall. I've never
That's great. I like that. I've played pickup gigs
no,
in Carnegie Hall. Wait, on the viola.
on
Like
the
that's
viola, man,
pretty cool.
on the
Like
viola.
I like that.
Yeah, I remember a PD. Folks out there still remember who PDQ Bach was. I remember a PDQ Bach gig. Yeah, so I've been practicing for 35 years, but given what my age is, if I had started like most folks, we'd be talking about 50, practicing for 50 years. You know. So anyway, it's been a long time. It's a lot of practicing. Um, but it's so interesting that over this period of time, first of all, the things that I practice vary. There are some constants, like every day that I practice, I'm practicing the initiation of sound, the onset, or bringing my vocal folds together in a coordinated way. So I'm always practicing that. I'm always practicing for optimal resonance. That is to make sure that the shapes I'm making on the inside are the efficient natural body EQ that results in optimal sound for whatever I'm doing. If there are folks who have never heard what we do described as natural EQ, I mean, that's what we all do every day. The reason this vocalization is different from the next vocalization I'm about to make is because of the shape I've made with my tongue, and I've made some acoustic changes. This thing called ah is the same vibration caused by movement of air as this E. Ah, E, ah, E, ah, E. The only difference is I moved my tongue from ah to E, or ah to E, and the result is an acoustic change. It's like I slid, it's like I'm using a mixer and I just slided the tongue up a little bit more and changed the acoustic envelope of what I said. I practice resonance strategies all the time and other things. Something I never have been good at for 35 years is florid singing, runs and riffs, that kind of thing. I have never developed a really good florid technique, so I still work on it. It's unbelievable. So there has been some constants, but in terms of, like, for example, repertoire, I sing now at almost 64 years old, much higher than I did much younger. My voice as I've developed get closer and closer to my true sound, I sing higher and higher. I have tenor colleagues who tease me all the time. Are you going to sing our part today? If anybody's familiar with, the famous Mozart Requiem, unbelievable, mind-blowing music, right? There's chorus, orchestra, 4 vocal soloists, and the bass soloist, very important part. And there's a wonderful duet between the bass vocal soloist and trombone. Very, very beautiful duet. The bass part is very low, and it has these octave leaps down to the bottom of the bass staff. I never had any business doing that, but I could kind of fake it. And there was only the trombone to compete with, no other instruments in that solo. So I would do it, and I'd get paid. Well, years and years ago, after one performance of that piece, my teacher scolded me. He said, "My dear boy," he called me my dear boy, "my dear boy, you must stop singing the Mozart Requiem." And I said, "Yes, I know. Because when you sing the Mozart Requiem, you are like Rudolph Valentino. If you don't know who Rudolph Valentino was, look him up. You look beautiful. We see your lips moving, but we hear no sound. Because it's too low. It's too low. So there's no resonance." He was right. So there are pieces that I've stopped singing as my voice has become truer and truer and is sitting higher and higher. I don't sing the Mozart Requiem anymore. I don't sing Beethoven's Ninth Symphony anymore. The famous, la da da dee da, that the baritone soloist intones, that is all comfortable. But inside the piece after that, there's some really low stuff. And when I sing it, so I don't sing that piece anymore. There are pieces that I did not sing at the beginning that I sing now, like some of the operas of Verdi, which kind of heavier, higher stuff for my kind of voice. So those kinds of things I sing now, which I didn't sing years ago. So yes, the repertoire morphs, and the tessitura of sort of the average point of the frequencies that I sing is kind of risen over time. And finally, as I've developed more and more efficiency in my resonance, I'm able to make a more penetrating sound through my own natural EQ. That is, I'm able to tune higher frequencies that tease the human ear so that I can sing and sound louder than I used to with much less effort. And as a result, more and more I sing as soloist with orchestras with no microphone, because I make my own natural amplification and my own natural EQ from how I make shapes.
I love that. I love that. I also love that idea that as you get older, you find your truer and truer sound. I think that some people feel like they're in a race with their youth. And I think that's a mistake. I think there are seasons. And I love the way you put that. I love that image a lot of finding out.
Sure.
Yeah.
And can I just share? I just want to share a concert experience I had years and years ago. In fact, I hadn't even started singing yet. I was in Minneapolis. I was a string player. I went to a concert, and a very famous pianist, who at that time was very, very old, Claudio Arrau, one of the great classical pianists of the 20th century, was giving a recital. So everybody flocked to it. 9-foot piano on the stage, right? He shuffles out from the wings to center stage. It took him forever to get from the wings to the piano. He sat down at the piano. So, okay, I'm going to make believe. There's the piano, and there's the audience. And he looked at, once he got settled, he looked out at us like this. As if, oh Lord, not again. And then he took his two little hands. He was, diminutive. He took his two little hands and kind of stroked the keys, and the piano exploded. I couldn't believe what I had just seen and heard. Here's this 90-ish-year-old man who probably needed help, should have had some help to walk across the stage, just seemed to just stroke those keys, and the sound went, it was unbelievable. So please don't be in a rush. Please don't be in a rush.
I love that. And Ben, I think that feeds in. This has been such an amazing hour already. And I think what Phil is saying now feeds into a question that you always ask. So I'd like to turn it over to you.
Yes, so this is the same question we give to every guest, and it's always great seeing the different answers. But the question is, what is a question that you think the students should be asking that they're not thinking of asking?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Personally, I think a question that I don't hear enough from students, and this goes to sort of technical development, I don't hear enough, oh, Mr. Phil, what do you think of this technical exercise that I've created? There is tremendous, mind-blowing creativity among so many folks, right? I mean, folks are writing songs. I mean, if there was some way to capture the volume of songwriting that happens here at Berklee, I think we would all be just flabbergasted by being able to measure the volume of activity that happens. But what I don't hear is, after, say, for example, there's a course I'm teaching, which is about technical development. After a few weeks of exploring certain topics and certain concepts with lots and lots of examples, say, of useful vocal warm-ups. And by the way, singers out there, folks who sing, warm-ups and technical exercises are two different things. Please, 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 please. And if you need help understanding that, I'm easy to find. What I don't hear is enough ownership of the learning process. So I've given you 10 examples of good, helpful, functional warm-ups. I'm not hearing, what about this one, number 11 that I just created? Or I just created this. What do you think of that? I hope this answers your question, Ben. And I hope it doesn't sound like I'm scolding, but I'm actually making a plea for our students to own their learning. Experiment. I have a notebook full of exercises I've created. I'm doing a recital an all Schubert recital next month. And I've created exercises around some of the more difficult technical elements of the songs I'm singing. And I didn't, yeah, I sort of, I understand the functional thing I need to do. And so, um, and the thing that Schubert wrote that I'm trying to execute is this. So I've created exercises that kind of do that in order to habituate so that I can actually then do Schubert's thing. Hope that makes sense.
That's fantastic. And I think that's such a great point to as we wrap up our hour. I mean, we could talk about these things for many more hours, and I hope we will. But for now, I just want to throw it back to Sheryl. Is there a final thought that you have as we're kind of wrapping up our pot of coffee today?
Well, first, thank you, Phil, for being on our show and just sharing all those insights. Sometimes we get caught up in maybe intellectual aspects about music and but not really think about how we are as the physical human that needs to breathe and be hydrated and have good posture and all of that, that those are, that's the basis for what we do. So thanks for reminding us of that because you're so knowledgeable and you have so many insights about just how to learn about that, learn about ourselves that way.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I share just two things with
Absolutely.
everybody as we wrap up?
Please do.
In terms of, well, for anybody who's singing, and I'd say particularly for guitarists who like to sing, or I get no money for this, but I want to make a plug for Sting's album. The great vocal artist Sting. His phenomenal album, and I'm sorry, I forget the lute player's name. This phenomenal album of songs by English composer John Dowland. Now, these are songs from the late 1500s, early 1600s. I mean, and here's Sting singing with this lute player and just creating the most amazing, intimate, heartfelt music making that I've ever witnessed. So I want to make a plug for Sting's album of songs by John Dowland with lute. So I wanted to make a plug for that. And the other thing I wanted to just say is, oh gosh, I forgot. Oh my gosh, what was it? Oh yeah, just all of us, whether we share it with students, professors, working professionals, etc. It's so important just to stay intellectually curious. You're like, okay, yeah, I think I know how that works, but do I really? And we just continue to challenge ourselves to understand what it is we do so that we can do it more and more efficiently, more and more effectively. And I'll say one last thing. Okay, posture, a body carriage. The great American soprano Jessie Norman, who passed away back in 2019, the title of her autobiography, this gets to the issue of body carriage or practice. The title of her autobiography, Stand Up Straight and Sing.
I love that.
So, whatever it is, whatever stand up straight means for you, please stand up straight. Optimize the use of your body to get optimal results.
I love that. I agree with all of those things. I love those records and those ideas, and you've given us so much to think about, and there's so much relatable. I think it's a great reminder when you're out there in a musical environment and you have friends and colleagues and teachers of all instruments, there's a ton we can learn from each other. There's so much that we have in common. So with that thought, thank you, Phil Lima. Thank you, Ben Cody, and thank you, Cheryl Bailey. We're going to stay and hang for a bit together, but we will be with all of you on the next Coffee Talk. Thanks, everybody.